Would you live somewhere where something terrible happened? In Japan, these properties are called Jikobukken, accident properties. They're places marked by tragedy, where past residents passed under unsettling or mysterious circumstances. No matter how much you clean or renovate, something always lingers. You might be familiar with the film Ju-on, The Grudge, the cursed house where every new tenant met a grim fate. That film may be fiction, but it's rooted in real fears. Japan has countless homes where people met unfortunate ends, and if you're curious, there's even a website called Oshimaland that maps them all out for the public to see. You can find links to this and a quick overview in my other Homes with a History videos. This series dives into those stories. Some are first-hand accounts, some are local legends, but all of them share one thing: a heavy, invisible presence that doesn't go away. We'll explore homes sold at suspiciously low prices, sealed-off rooms, and the quiet weight of the people who never fully left. Have you ever heard of a Jikobukken? In Japan, the word means something like a home with a history. It's used for places where something bad happened. Those who took their own lives or had someone take theirs. And lonely, lonely deaths. Something tragic enough to leave a mark, if not on the building, then on the people who come after. Most people avoid these kind of apartments and homes like the plague. But not me. See, I've never believed in ghosts. I've never had the sixth sense or felt anything weird in my life. So when I was fresh out of vocational school and looking for my first apartment, I didn't care what kind of past it had, as long as it was cheap. So I went in and I asked the agent, "You got any places that are cheap even if they're a Jikobukken?" He didn't even flinch. "Yeah, I got something actually." And here's what he offered. A place in a 40-year-old 2-story wooden building with no bath, but there's a toilet. 2K layout. The last tenant, a man in his 50s, died from some kind of illness. He wasn't found until about 2 months later. But new wallpaper, new tatami mats, and the rent was only 25,000 yen. Well, seeing a deal like that, I jumped on it. The place was exactly what you'd expect. Old, creaky, worn down, the kind of apartment that always feels a little cold even during summer. The agent didn't try to sugarcoat it. He walked in, looked around and said, "Well, it is what it is." Even with the new wallpaper, the room had that smell, faint but unmistakable, like damp wood and something else. I couldn't help but wonder, did maggots crawl through here? Were the flies and maggots feeding off him days before anyone noticed? The agent must have read my face because he quickly added, "Cleaning was thorough, spotless, I promise." I signed the lease. I lived there for months. No weird noises, no ghostly sightings. Nothing strange happened. But then came the day that I decided to clean the closet. A built-in closet with sliding doors. 4 panels split into an upper and lower half, with a beam running down the center. I pulled everything out and crouched inside to dust the corners, and that's when I noticed something. Something was carved into the wooden pillar inside the closet. At first I couldn't make it out. It was dark and the angle was weird, but when I leaned in a little closer, I realized that I was looking at a face, carved directly into the wood with something sharp, like a nail or a blade. The lines were jagged, desperate. The face was stiff, expressionless, just 2 dull eyes and the suggestion of hair. From the shape of it, I think it was supposed to be a woman. But that wasn't the worst part. There were bite marks around it. Real ones, adult-sized, deep enough to leave indentations in the wood. And the wood around the face was stained, discolored from saliva, possibly blood, something else. I was in that narrow, dark closet, crouched eye level with this wooden woman, and I felt like she was staring right back at me. No emotion, no life, just this cold, dull face with teeth marks, like someone had tried to eat her out of the wood. I started sweating, cold, greasy kind of sweat. I looked down at the base of the pillar, and there were more stains, splattered, dried, soaked into the wood over time. Was it the old man, the guy who lived here before me, or someone before him? I don't know, but I can imagine it clearly. Someone crawling into this closet, staring at this carved face, biting the wood again and again, and dripping something onto the floor as they did, possibly blood. And it didn't stop there. That was just the top half of the closet. I checked the bottom section, and it was the same. And then I went next door, the room on the other side of the apartment, and I checked its oshire. Same thing. Another face, more bites, more stains. So, what does this mean? Was it the same person carving all of them? Or was each tenant continuously making some kind of pattern, unknowingly doing the same thing as the last? Some people say a home with a history can do that to people. That the energy of a place, the pain, the madness, and the death can linger, can infect, can make people repeat things they don't understand. Maybe this old man didn't die of an illness. Maybe he just lost himself in this closet, carving a woman who never existed, biting into the wood like he was trying to make her real. Or maybe he was afraid of her. Maybe the woman in the wood was already there, and he couldn't stop looking, couldn't stop biting. I don't know, so that's why I'm here. So let me ask you, what do you think happened in that closet? Have you ever stayed in a place that felt wrong? And would you ever live in a Jikobukken? Let me know. And whatever you do, don't look too closely at the walls of your closet. There's every chance someone could be staring back. This happened about 15 years ago. I was still in high school back then, living with my dad after my mum ran out on us. Not that I blamed her. My father was, well, not much of one. Man of big talk, small action, and zero responsibility. At the time we were hopping between relatives' places, barely keeping our heads above water. So when he said he'd finally found a place to live, cheap too, I was relieved. Even if that relief was thin. It was an old wooden apartment halfway up a slope, the kind of place you could just tell had a history, from the way it leaned into the earth. What struck me as weird, even back then, was that my dad brought me along for the viewing. Usually he made decisions without asking anyone else, especially me. I should have known then that something was off, the second we stepped inside. The whole place stank of incense, not faintly either, like it had been burning continuously for days. The deeper we went, the worse it got. And then I saw it, a small burner, still smoldering, placed in the exact center of the tatami room. I looked up instinctively. Above us, a hole gaped in the ceiling. Through it, a thick wooden beam crossed overhead. Bits of plastic twine, like the kind used for moving boxes, dangled in frayed strands from the center of that beam. You didn't have to be a genius to figure out what had been tied up there. I asked the real estate agent about it casually, not really expecting any form of honesty. And he smiled, like he was explaining away a crack in the paint. Oh, that. The last tenant liked to hang decorations. Guess it left a bit of a mark. Right, okay, yeah, decorations. It didn't matter. We moved in anyway. It must have been dirt cheap. At first, nothing happened though. But as the days rolled into weeks and night began to fall earlier with the season, I started noticing something. That room, the room with the beam, had a single window facing the back of the building. On the other side of the glass was a narrow alley between our place and a tall concrete wall. It wasn't a space anyone could reasonably walk through, barely wide enough to slip sideways, and yet somehow I saw someone. He was a man. He had a pale face, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes. He'd appear outside that window sometimes, around dusk. Sometimes he'd just pass by. Other times he'd stop and stare directly in. I went out back once to check. The path was filled with broken stones and uneven ground. No footprints, no sign of anyone having walked through there in ages. Still, I saw him again. And eventually I stopped looking. One night I invited some friends over. It was a joke. We called it a test of courage. Kimodamashi. I didn't tell them everything. I just told them it was an old place with a weird vibe and maybe a bit of a history. They brought snacks, we hung out, night fell. The kind of laughter that only high schoolers know how to do echoed around the walls. And then the room got quiet. The air in the center of the room shimmered. Just slightly, like heat waves, you know? One of my friends, the quietest of the bunch, leaned over and whispered, eyes locked on that strange ripple in the air, and said, "I think someone's hanging there." I didn't say anything for a moment, but then I told him, "Don't stare, just pretend you didn't notice." Another friend who had been acting all tough glanced up, froze, and suddenly said she needed to leave. She never came back, not once. Later that week, I was half asleep in bed when I heard it. The creak of wood above me, faint, rhythmic, like something shifting its weight on that beam. I told myself it was the old structure settling. I told myself a lot of things to get by in that place. We lasted about a year in that apartment. Barely. The building's gone now. It was tore down, replaced by a newer, trendier-looking complex with clean lines and pastel walls. But some things don't change when you paint over them. You can tear down the walls, but the air remembers. I think about that place sometimes. How people are so quick to overlook what they don't want to deal with. The real estate agent brushing it off. Owners painting over paint. Tenants like us who can't afford to be picky. That apartment was a bargain. It was a steal. And I guess we got exactly what we paid for. This happened when I was working in real estate. Nothing too dramatic at first, just another transaction involving a second-hand house. I brokered the deal between the seller and a new couple who were eager to get into the property market. It wasn't a particularly old house, nothing flashy either, just a typical suburban home with a small staircase in the entry hall. I closed the deal and moved on to the next. A few days later, I got a call. It was from the wife of the new owner. I expected it to be a complaint about plumbing, maybe a question about paperwork. Instead, she said, "This house is cold." I paused, caught off guard. I mean, houses are colder than apartments, especially standalone ones. It's actually quite common, I told her. She didn't seem that convinced, though, but she accepted the explanation and hung up. Another few days passed, and she called again. This time, her voice was more anxious. "It's cold, not just physically. There's a woman in the house too, inside." I went quiet. She insisted that she'd seen someone on the stairs, a woman, standing there. I assumed, maybe too quickly, that she was perhaps unwell, maybe going through something psychological, so I called her husband. He sounded worn out. Said his wife had been saying the same thing since they moved in. She said she'd wake up crying sometimes, saying, "She's on the stairs again." He asked me hesitantly, can you look? Can you check? Maybe look into the house's past for us?" I didn't want to. Honestly, I didn't feel like it was my responsibility, but something about the way he asked made me feel like I had to do it. The previous listing agent claimed to know nothing. There wasn't a problem. All they had was paperwork. But someone else did know. A neighbor. I went by the area and asked around. An older woman watering her plants said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "Oh, that house. Yeah, the wife hung herself on the stairs. Ambulance came and everything. She didn't make it, though." Just like that, matter of fact, no hesitation, no concern. Her death hadn't been disclosed. Technically, it didn't have to be. In this industry, we call ourselves third-party intermediaries. So we're not exactly the ones at fault. We're not liable. The sale was already finalized. But it didn't last long. That case became one of the rare few where a completed deal was reversed. The buyers pulled out, no penalties, just it was undone. I remember hearing about it again in a lecture given by a real estate consultant. He brought it up as an example of why deaths like that in new properties are a nightmare. Word gets around, he said, fast. Suddenly a property worth, 30 million yen is worth 12, he said, almost laughing. When they take their own lives, it's a mess. The families don't have the money, you see, so there's no one to sue, no way to recover losses. The owners get backed into corners, and sometimes they end up taking their own lives too. It's such a pain, honestly, if you're going to do it. He scoffed. If you're going to do it like that, do us all a favor, go into the woods, okay? Don't drag us into it. People in the room chuckled. I didn't. There was another thing he mentioned. Rental properties with a history? You'd be surprised how many tenants try to twist them to their advantage. Yeah, this place gives me the creeps, they'll say. But I'll stay if you drop the rent down. Actually, I'm not going to pay full price until you do. He said it like it was an inconvenience, but all I could think of was how casually people use death, someone's actual end, as a bargaining chip, a discount. The truth is, ghosts aren't actually the scariest part of this line of work, to be honest. It's the living, the ones who know something tragic happened, and instead of showing an ounce of empathy, they find a way to profit from it. The ones who lie, the ones who withhold, the ones who shrug when you tell them someone died on the stairs. Sometimes I wonder about that house, whether it really was just the cold, or if something had lingered. Not out of malice, just left behind. Repeating itself. And I wonder if the woman ever really left that staircase, or if people just got better at pretending they didn't see her. In the real estate world, they talk about property values, market trends, and profit margins. It's our lifeblood, but behind closed doors, in quiet halls and dim stairwells, there are stories the numbers don't cover. This happened 2 years ago, when I was in my 3rd year of junior high. We moved to Tsukuba City in Ibaraki Prefecture because of my dad's job. It was the worst possible timing for a transfer, right before graduation. And I was pretty crushed about that, but there wasn't much I could do about it. It was work, and work takes priority. Still, what really killed my mood was the house we moved into. When I saw it for the first time, I knew it was going to take forever to clean. The yard was a mess, littered with snack wrappers and garbage bags, but what really caught my eye was one of the windows facing the garden, shattered glass still hanging in the frame. I remember thinking, who the hell's managing this place? I was stood outside when I heard my dad call out from the 2nd floor. Hey, Kazuya, bring those trash bags from the car and come up here. So I grabbed the bags and went inside. The moment I stepped through the door, though, I felt it. Something was definitely off. The air was heavy, and even though it was almost noon, the whole place felt dark, like it was stuck in a permanent twilight. Just wrong. The staircase was straight ahead. A hallway led down to the kitchen and living room, and another room that looked like a traditional sitting room. Upstairs I could hear my dad, mum, and younger brother rustling around, cleaning up. We're a family of 4. I made my way up. My dad was already flapping out a trash bag, and he gave me a look that said something like, "Let's clean this place up from top to bottom. You two, come on." I joined in, reluctantly picking up trash that had been scattered across the floor. It was bad. Worse than I could expect. Frozen food packaging, moldy candy. I think there was an umaibo at one point. Wrappers stuck to the floor. Just disgusting. As I moved further down the hall, I reached the far end of the 2nd floor, Something on the left wall caught my eye. A section of the wall was covered in layers of duct tape. A lot of it. The color of that section of the wall was different to the rest of it. Too white, too clean, like it had been patched up or something. I stared at it. It was shaped like a door. And when I looked at the layout of the house, yeah, there should have been a room there. But there was no doorknob, just a sealed rectangle where a door should have been, completely covered in tape and white plaster. "Hey, why is this room blocked off?" I asked. My dad came over and had a look. He muttered something like this. "Oh, that's weird. I wasn't told about this." And he walked off, phone in hand. As soon as he was gone, my little brother came over. "What's going on?" "This wall, I think it used to be a door." "No way." "Really? Well, that's kind of cool." He reached out and ran his hand along the wall like he was examining some kind of weird museum exhibit. But then he stopped, eyes on the center. "Hey, the tape here feels loose." I touched it too, and he was right. There was give. The wall wasn't solid beyond that spot. He started tugging on the tape, trying to rip it away. It didn't come off cleanly, it just tore in strips, but enough peeled away to reveal a small hole. Behind the tape, it wasn't wall. It was just darkness. Now, both of us were peeling. The hole grew, strip by strip, until it was about the size of a manhole cover. My brother leaned in to take a look. "Whoa, it's pitch black. I can't see a thing." "What, there's no light coming through the window?" I asked. I peered in too, just like he had. Total darkness, not a single speck of light. It didn't even feel like a room, if I'm honest with you, more like a void. That's when my dad came back, and he wasn't alone. With him was the property manager, Yanagi-san. My dad froze when he saw the hole. "What the hell is this?" My brother explained how the tape had been loose and he couldn't help himself. My dad turned to the manager, his voice tight. "Yanagi-san, why wasn't this mentioned?" Yanagi-san looked shaken. That's on me. I'm really sorry, actually. I didn't think anyone would. I mean, if we're gonna address it, He wouldn't even look at the hole. His eyes just stared at the floor. Then quietly he said, "Can we move downstairs? I'd like to explain things there." My parents agreed, and the three of them went down. I went outside. I needed to check something. That sealed room, where was its window? I circled to the side of the house, and yeah, there was a wall that looked different, brighter than the rest, like someone had sealed it up from the outside too. No glass though, no frame, just smooth white wall. A few minutes later, my parents and Yanagi-san came out the door. "We'll take care of the work," he was saying. We'll tear down the wall and we'll restore access to that room. At our expense, of course. Again, my apologies." My parents thanked him and he left. "So they're gonna fix it, huh?" I asked. My dad nodded. "Yeah, break it open, clean it up, no problem." That's when my brother screamed. He came tearing down the stairs like something was chasing him. "Something's in that room," he cried. He was pale, shaking. He said he leaned into the hole to get a better look and heard something, a sound way in the back of the room like something was dragging itself across the floor. Our mum tried to brush it off. "It's a rat, probably. Maybe raccoon." "No," my brother snapped at her. It wasn't an animal, it was like something big dragging itself, like it was pulling something heavy across the floor. My dad said he'd block the hole for now and not to worry. That it probably was just a big rat. Later, I got curious. I grabbed a flashlight and went upstairs. The beam of the flashlight cut through the dark. Boxes, junk, dust, old toys, a storage room basically. No sounds, no movement. Still standing there alone in the hallway, I felt cold. The kind of cold that creeps into your bones. Like the whole house was watching. Well, at least that's how it felt to me. My dad came up the stairs next. "What's in there?" he said. "Storage. I think that's about it. Still gotta clean this room out before the workers come," he muttered. Why would someone seal off a room like this? He patched up the hole with cloth and tape. I watched him do it. I told myself it was over. that we were done with this until the work got started. But before I left the hallway, I glanced back. The cloth was bulging slightly, like something behind it was pressing on it, trying to get through. My whole body tensed, and I bolted downstairs. We settled into the house. Parents took the first room. I got a room upstairs. My brother was supposed to have his own, but he refused to sleep on the second floor. He ended up sleeping in the living room. I didn't blame him. That night, I tried to sleep, and then I heard scratch, drag, scratch, drag. Something was moving outside my door. Something was coming from the hole. But I'll tell you this, that was only the beginning. That night, I tried to sleep. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. The sound was faint but unmistakable. Something rough was scraping against the wooden hallway floor outside my room. I turned off my lamp, hoping to hear better, and it actually worked. Thump, drag, scratch. A pattern, slow, methodical, like something moving without legs, like it was crawling, pulling itself closer, inch by inch. I pressed my ear to the door. I couldn't breathe. From that direction, where the room was sealed, something was dragging itself along the hallway, and it was coming towards me. Then there was a new sound that broke through the silence. Rip, tap, rip. Like adhesive being peeled from surface, followed by a gentle patter of something touching the floor. It clicked. The tape, the cloth, it was being peeled away again. Whatever was inside was trying to get out. I wanted to run, to yell, to do something, anything, but my body wouldn't respond. I was frozen. All I could do was listen. The scraping grew louder, closer, and then thump, right outside my door. I had no choice. I took a deep breath, mustered up all my energy, and I screamed. Hey, Dad, Mom, something like that. I remember my voice cracked. And then I screamed again, louder, for help. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. My door flew open. My dad burst in, out of breath and furious. What the hell are you doing? You're gonna wake the whole neighborhood. I couldn't answer right away. My mouth moved, but nothing came out. He followed my gaze towards the hallway. The cloth. It was gone. He walked over to the wall and swore under his breath. Then without a word, he recovered the hole with a new sheet of cloth and more tape. Later, downstairs over dinner, I tried to explain what I'd heard, what I'd felt. Mum rolled her eyes. Dad gave me a skeptical look, but my brother, he stared down at his plate and he said nothing. After dinner, I cornered him. Hey, what did you really see yesterday when you looked in that hole? He didn't answer at first. He just sat there, eyes unfocused. Eventually, in a low voice, he said, I saw a hand just at the edge of it, right in the light. It wasn't human. It was too long. The fingers, they moved slowly, like it knew I was watching. He wouldn't say any more than that. That night, I insisted on sleeping in the living room with him. I couldn't go back upstairs. None of us slept well that night. The next day, we tried to carry on like normal. I had to get ready for school, my first day at a new place. Dad was driving me. I realized too late that my uniform and bag was still upstairs in my room. I didn't want to go up there alone, so I asked my brother to come with me. He hesitated, but then nodded. And together we climbed the stairs. When we turned the corner, the cloth over the hole was gone again. My brother froze. I wanted to pretend it was nothing, but the hallway now felt colder, like something had recently passed through. I grabbed my stuff as fast as I could, and we both bolted downstairs. Later that afternoon, after school, I came home to an empty house. The door was locked, no sign of anyone. I used the spare key, and I stepped inside. Dark, silent. I turned on the TV and cranked the volume, needing some kind of noise to keep the quiet away. I dozed off on the couch and woke up to a loud bang. The TV was off, the lights too. I sat up, my heart pounding. Had the power gone out? I checked the street through the window. The neighboring houses were all lit up. Just us, only our house had gone dark. Panic began to set in. I stumbled through the dark towards the entrance, towards the breaker panel, and as I passed by the staircase, I heard it again. Slide, drag, creak. It was upstairs. It was moving again. I stood there staring into the blackness, and then I saw it. Something descending the stairs, not walking, crawling on limbs too long. Fingers were curled in unnatural ways. It didn't make a sound, not a scream, not a whisper. I dropped to the floor. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. And before I passed out, I swear, this thing looked at me. It saw me. Not with eyes, but it saw me. I woke up in my room. My dad said they found me collapsed by the front door. The room with the hole was now open. The wall tore down, bright light flooded in. It looked normal, like a child's room. Toys, picture books, a small bed. But no one used it. Not once. We left the house a few months later, right after I graduated junior high. And to this day, I don't know what that thing was. But whatever it was, it didn't want to be forgotten, and didn't want to stay sealed away. This happened about 2 years ago when I was living with my girlfriend, Mai, in a small apartment. Just the two of us, renting a place that was a little older, a little cheaper than most, but we didn't really think much of it at the time. You know how it is when you're young and you're just trying to save a bit of money. We didn't have much, but it felt like ours. A little space to call home. That night I got home earlier than usual. My part-time shift had ended ahead of schedule, and the apartment was quiet. I kicked off my shoes, grabbed a drink from the fridge, flopped down in front of the TV, just killing time, waiting for Mai to finish her shift and come back home. Without warning, I felt hands gently cover my eyes, and a voice whispered behind me, "Guess who?" It startled me at first, but then I laughed. "Mai, you're back early," I said casually, reaching up to pull her hands away, except when I turned around. No one was there. I froze. My hands were still half raised in the air, like they were expecting to meet someone else's. But there was nothing. No warmth, no presence, just the hum of the TV. And then the sudden, awful silence. My heart started pounding. I could hear the blood in my ears. I sat there trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was in my head. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe the voice could have come from the TV. Yeah, maybe it was just an echo of a commercial or something weird in the background. But then I remembered the hands. They weren't imagined. They were really there. I'd felt them. Soft, cold palms, fingertips, just lightly pressing enough to cover my eyes. I grabbed them. I peeled them off. That feeling still lingered on my skin. And that awful voice, playful, teasing, had been inches from my ear. I was halfway between denial and panic, trying desperately to convince myself it was nothing, just stress maybe, exhaustion, maybe a little too much caffeine. But then things got worse, much worse. Just as I tried to stand up, thinking I'd go outside to clear my head, I realized that I couldn't move. Complete paralysis. I was awake, aware, but locked in place. My arms, legs, and even my fingers were frozen. It was like I'd been tied down by invisible ropes. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. I remember my mind screaming, but my body did nothing. And then later I heard it. Laughter. Male and female voices, young, playful laughter. It started in one corner of the room, then spread, like there were people all around me, hidden in the shadows, chuckling at some kind of private joke that I wasn't in on. And as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The laughter was replaced by a single high-pitched, blood-curdling scream right in my ear. And that was the last thing I could remember. When I came to, Mai was crouched over me, her face pale with panic. She said she'd come home and found me lying there, stiff as a board, drenched in sweat. My eyes were open, but I was unresponsive. She tried shaking me, calling my name, even splashing water on my face, but nothing worked, until it suddenly did. I told her everything, every detail. And she didn't laugh at me, she didn't try to rationalize it. She just nodded, serious, and helped me pack an overnight bag. We ended up staying at a friend's place that night. Neither of us slept much. The next morning, still shaken, I went straight to the landlord. I asked him point blank if anything strange had ever happened in that apartment. He hesitated for a second, and then he sighed. He said a few years back, a couple had lived there. They had a drug problem, apparently. Things got violent. One night, the man killed his girlfriend and took his own life not long after. The apartment had been cleaned, renovated, even new floors, fresh paint. But paint doesn't cover everything. We moved out within the week. Didn't stay long enough to finish out the month. It was a bargain apartment. Low rent, convenient location, no questions asked. But there's always a reason why it's cheap, you know. Sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it can tap you on the shoulder, cover your eyes and ask, guess who? Da-da-da. I don't live in that town anymore. I haven't in years. I'm not sure when the first house appeared, whether it was there before I was born or it popped up after, but by the time I was old enough to remember walking to elementary school, it was already standing there. It wasn't an old place either, not some decaying haunted mansion from centuries ago. It was pretty modern. Traditional, Japanese style, but newly built. And the town? Total countryside. The kind where you would walk narrow dirt paths between rice fields just to get to school. This house was on that route. I passed it nearly every day. And for a long time it was just there. From 1st through 5th grade. Nobody said a word about it. No rumors, no stories, nothing creepy about it at all. That changed the summer of 5th grade. A boy named K transferred to our school and moved into the house across the street from it. That's when we all started to understand that something wasn't quite right with that place. But before I get into the weird house, let's just call it House B. I need to explain something about the house across from it. We'll call that one House A. So here's the background. The area where House B stood was part of a relatively new housing development. It used to be farmland, flat, open rice fields, but by the time I was born, the river had been redirected, the land sold, and the houses were going up. Pretty standard rural expansion. Now, House A, the one across the street, was built by someone who already owned the land there. They'd lived in that area forever, and when the new road was built and the farmland was developed, they decided to rebuild their home on the same lot. But they had to do something first. There used to be a small Dosojin, a roadside guardian, like a little stone deity standing on that land, but it got moved somewhere. These small statues are basically there to protect travelers from evil spirits. When the house was rebuilt, the family had the Dosojin properly blessed, respectfully relocated. The new home went up without any issue. Except not long after they moved in, strange things started happening. They began hearing a baby crying. At first they thought it was a new family with an infant that had moved in nearby. Totally normal, right? But the baby never stopped crying. It didn't matter if it was day or night, they heard it all the time. It was non-stop. Eventually they got curious and asked around. But here's the weird part. Everybody thought that the crying was coming from House A. The neighborhood started trying to trace the source, and finally they found it. The crying was coming from beneath the floor of House A. Total panic in the neighborhood. Word spread fast. The family called for a spiritual cleansing, exorcisms, blessing, everything that you can imagine. Nothing worked. Eventually, a high-ranking spiritualist or priest of some sort, someone with real authority, came to investigate, and he told the family, the Dorsojin, the guardian statue, needs to be returned to its original place. And so they moved it back, and after that, the crying stopped. Because of this, House A became sort of famous amongst the locals. Especially us kids. Everyone whispered about it. It was one of those everybody knows but no one's supposed to talk about it kind of stories. And right across the street from it was House B, the house that rejected people. Keikun and his family moved into House B that summer. But they didn't even last a month. They packed up and left without much fuss, and moved away to another town that winter. At the time it seemed like one of those things, no big deal. Years passed, I grew up, I went to school, I got a job, eventually lost touch with everyone from my old town. But then one day, over 10 years later, I got invited back. One of my childhood friends was getting married, so I went. And it was honestly great. We caught up, laughed, told stories, total nostalgia overload. At one point I brought up House A, the one with the guardian statue, and I joked, "Is that weird house still standing?" That's when the tone shifted. One of my friends, let's call him Georgie, he leaned in and said, "You remember the house across from it, right? House B?" Of course I did. That was where Keikun and his family lived for like 2 weeks or something. "Yeah, you know why they moved out so fast?" I told him I had no idea. Then he told me that something happened that completely reframed everything I thought about the house. Apparently in the 10 years since I left, more than 10 different families had moved into House B. All of them had moved out. None of them had lasted more than a month. There were 3 minor fires. Nobody knows why they started, and no one could find any single reason why everyone left. But the stories? The rumors? Those stuck. According to Georgie, people reported seeing an old woman wandering inside the house. Others saw a little girl in the garden walking in circles. Keikun's mother, who was completely fine before moving in, told people she saw a man standing on the roof staring at her, silently. She fell into some kind of mental breakdown soon after. That's why they moved so suddenly. Even after all this, the house went through multiple attempts at spiritual cleansing. Nothing worked. At one point, a TV crew or maybe a radio team tried to film something on set there with a psychic, but the moment the psychic stepped onto the property, he collapsed, and the shoot was cancelled and the footage was never aired. At this point I had to ask, what the hell is wrong with House B then? Georgie just shook his head. Nobody really knows. Some people say the house was built using grave dirt. Others think that there's bodies buried underneath the floor. But there's no proof, it's just stories, still. No one stays, people move in and within weeks, they're gone. He then paused and said something I'll never forget. You know what they call it now, right? I shrugged. They call it the Triangle House. Apparently for some unknown reason, the lot is shaped like a triangle. No one knows why it was designed that way, but everyone agrees it's just wrong. The name stuck, and yeah, it's still empty. He told me to go take a look on my way home, so I did, and I wish I hadn't. The house still sits off of the main prefectural road, but when I drove past it, I saw that the front was blocked off with piles and piles of sandbags, hiding the entrance completely. The moment I saw it, I knew that something was off. I didn't get any closer, I just kept driving, but that night, something came back to me. A memory I completely buried. I was in elementary school, the 5th grade. One day walking home from school in a group, we passed House B, and we all stopped. There were people standing on the roof, not workers, just figures, standing there, looking down at us, and they were laughing. Loud, cackling, open-mouthed laughter. We ran home crying that day, screaming the whole way. I'd forgotten all about it, or maybe I chose to forget. But now I wonder if that house, House B or the Triangle House, is even a house at all. Maybe it was never meant to be lived in, or it was built for something else, or, I don't know, someone else. So if you ever see a home with an empty yard and a strange shape and no one inside for years, it might be one of them. A Jikobukken. A house that just refuses people.